All right, time for a testimony today. I'm going to focus on one portion of my life that it's not really one that I'm excited to tell too much because it shows a little bit of vulnerability about me and how I have viewed myself over the years. But I'm going to share with you guys this portion of my life of how God helped me through feeling alone, especially in the area of relationships and not really feeling like there was anybody for me. Just that whole thing. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So, like most girls, when you're younger, you have this desire to dream about who you're going to marry, what that's going to look like, how your life's going to pan out, like all that kind of stuff, just like any other girl. And I remember at a very young age, well, I consider young, I would think probably around 10 years old, that I was actually really adamant about wanting to know who my husband was going to be. Like, I felt like if I did not have someone who liked me, then I was not worth anything. And that actually carried out through my whole teenage years. It was pretty rough at different times of how I viewed myself. So while at this young age, I remember, obviously, like most girls, having crushes on different boys and never wanted them to know that I had any kind of crush on them, that I liked them or anything like that. And I kept that all to myself. But I would constantly have this conversation with God throughout the majority of my life. My dog is about to talk to you all. What do you want, TJ? Go get you a toy and lay down. Just a minute. Okay, we're back. So, trying to gather my thoughts back into this. I had internalized this thought process about myself that if I ever said anything to them, it would, of course, be a flat out no. I had already kind of gotten this self-esteem about myself that I was never good enough. I never had any boys come and tell me that they liked me or anything like that. And when guys did find out that I liked them, then I actually had a few different responses that has scarred me well into my adulthood. One of them found out that I liked them and was just kind of nicely saying no, but it really hurt me a lot because I liked this guy for like years. And I actually remember, I know this could sound really cheesy, bad, be like, come on, Jennifer, get a hold of yourself. But I remember literally praying and crying, asking that this boy would be my boyfriend. And just be like, why, God, why aren't you answering my prayers? And just constantly in this feeling of not good enough, that someone would like me and want to spend time with me. And I didn't care about any of the affectionate part. I just wanted someone to like me. And I didn't have that. And him telling me no, even in a nice way, just like it verified what I already thought about myself. And then the second one that really did it in for me was a guy that I liked in high school, and he found out, and he told me flat out. Now, keep in mind, I've always been a more on the thick side, okay? More to love. And so I'm never really like fat and obese, but just more chunky and athletically muscular and sometimes in my life. And so he told me to my face that he would never date me and no one would ever date me because I was fat, essentially. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that really tore me up. Like, if anything, it's making me want to cry right now. If anything, it like verified everything, like that much more. So fast forward, I mean, I played basketball for 1 year because that is not my sport, but I played softball and I was fairly active, and I just like threw myself into that and friendships and going to church, which might sound like a great thing, but I still really felt like this emptiness because I would see girls that I played ball with and guys were like always wanting to go out with them. And even though I did not want their type of relationships, I promise you I did not. I just wanted to be liked. I just wanted someone to like me, think that I was pretty, not think that I was fat and disgusting as this guy clearly made it to me that I was. So I really struggled with that. And even to this day, to an extent, it bothers me and it's like in the back of my mind. So I'm going to date myself here, but back when the whole AOL Instant Messenger, Yahoo chat rooms, all that kind of stuff was big and just starting out, I was well invested, okay? I was like, finally, because my church growing up was small and the only other guys there were my cousins, so that's not an option. And the guys that I liked at church camp were hours away, and there was just no way for that to happen, nor did they like me either. So I just really felt isolated in this relationship portion of my life. And I was always asking God, like, why? Why am I not loved? Why am I not liked? Why do guys not like me? And I really began to think that I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to have a boyfriend, any of that kind of stuff. So when all of this like chat room stuff came out, I became very much optimistic, thinking, okay, maybe I can find a guy that likes me somewhere else. And this just like opened up 1,000 doors, right? Well, little did I know, all the internet stuff and the warnings and things were not prevalent in that time frame. So there were times where there was clear, like the Holy Spirit was like, just walk away. And there were other times that I was deceiving myself, thinking that things were going to work out. I actually did online dating for a while, and none of those were good situations at all. I was so desperate for someone to want me for me and like me that I was willing to jump at whoever came first. I mean, like, clearly there could have been very old men flirting with me and I wouldn't have known it, especially then. And I was not aware of that. You know, the common ASL, your age, your sex, meaning your gender, and your location, or like the thing that you sent out to everybody. And I probably just like brought so many memories back to people who did the chat rooms back in the day just by saying ASL. But like when you would find somebody that was saying that they were your age or whatever, you start getting into these deep conversations. And there were different guys that I really connected with in other states. And then I started to be like, why do they gotta be so far away? You know, like there always seemed to be some kind of hurdle, and I was never being satisfied in the relationship area of my life. So I finally get to a point where I'm in a relationship with a guy that quite honestly was not the best situation at all. I viewed the relationship more of like, he likes me, and so I'm just going to help him. I did not really love him. I did not see him as a potential husband, none of those things. But I was just happy that someone liked me, so I was willing to stay in that relationship. It wasn't until my dad so graciously pulled me aside. He wanted to go eat breakfast. And he said, I want to have a talk with you. And I was like, okay. I'm about like 17, 18 years old, 19, somewhere around there. Probably 18, 19 years old. And so I went and had breakfast with my dad and had a conversation. So we're eating breakfast and my dad says to me, so I've got a serious question for you and I want your honest answer. He said, do you really see yourself marrying this guy? And I knew immediately to say no, because I didn't. But at the same time, I still had that initial but I don't want to give up something that I've been yearning for, even though I'm not really happy in it. But I was honest with my dad. I said, no, I don't see marrying him. He said, then why are you in a relationship with him? And I never took that perspective at all. I wasn't dating to marry. I was just dating to feel a sense of completion within myself, or to feel liked, to feel loved. It was in that moment that I knew I had to break things off, and I did. It was ugly. I won't go into details of all that stuff, but it was one of the most scariest times in my life. Not because of losing somebody and that liked me or anything. It was what happened afterwards because of his obsession. I'll just put it that way. And I was so scared for my life at different times that it was a huge wake-up call, we'll just put it that way, that I knew that I could no longer just be chasing after whomever said that they liked me or gave me any kind of attention or affection. I knew those couldn't be the reasons why I was in a relationship with someone. So after all this stuff happened, I had received a phone call from a guy that I had actually met through one of the chat rooms that I was mentioning before, and we had such a good connection talking about Jesus, and I was so excited about that, but things never worked. He was so much more mature than me. He's like a year or two older than me, but we actually still keep a connection, him and his wife and their kids. They're in ministry, and it's just turned out beautifully for both of us. But at this point in time, it was kind of funny because I just dealt with all that stuff. Then he calls me out of the blue, and at that time I was like, thank you, Jesus. But we were never in a place to actually get together and meet up. It was just not God's plan at all. And so there again, then I was like, bursted bubble again. So here's how God works everything out, okay? What I have left out in this story is how, while I'm freaking out my entire life up to this point, about 19 years old, little did I know that God had already shown me, provided for me, and given me a husband who loves me for me. And he made that connection from birth. And that whole part of the story is beautiful because God connected my family with his family a long time ago, even though we lived in two completely different states. Go ahead. What'd you just say?
Is this the part where God blessed you with me?
Yeah.
I answered all your prayers.
Okay, walk away. So anyway, little did I know that God was actually working things out. His relatives were actually my parents' pastors around the time that I was born, and so we got connected with his family that way. And long story short, God reconnected us at this point in life. I was 19 years old, went through all of these things I just mentioned to you. And so we got connected and started talking. I had to relocate. Too many people in the house. So let me get back to the story in hand. So we get to the point where we're connecting and talking. And this is where I saw God's hand work everything out. Because not only were we connecting, talking about our own individual lives, but we were talking about church and things like that, both raised in the same church organization and everything. So we had that in common. And I, one night, was praying while we were chatting online, and because, remind you, he was in a different state. And I said to the Lord, it was like 10 o'clock at night. No one was going to call at 10 o'clock at night, nor did he have my number. And so I prayed this to the Lord. I said a simple prayer, and I said, Lord, if this is who you have for me, if this is my husband, Like, I was to the point where I was done playing games. I actually became very much headstrong in my relationship with the Lord. Like, I was so focused on the Lord. I was allowing God to use me more. And so I was like, I'm not playing anymore. Like, I'm done messing around. So if this isn't who you have for me, then let's move on. And so, so I pray, Lord, if this is who you have for me, then have him ask me if he can call me. Again, he didn't have my number. It was well past 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday night. No one's typically going to ask that kind of question. Within seconds, his next message that he put up, because we're talking on Instant Messenger, was, can I call you? So you better believe I sat there and didn't respond right away. I actually was like, and I said, Mom! She comes over like, what is wrong with you? And I was like, you wouldn't believe what just happened. Mind you, he's still waiting for a response. And I told her what had just happened. She said, well, respond back to him. And so I said, yes, you can call me. And from that point on, we talked to each other for, I think every single day we talked to each other until the night before our wedding. And we got engaged only 20 days after actually dating, and got married 9 months after that. And we have been married for 20 years. If you stuck around this long, thank you. I can be very detailed in my explaining of stories and testimonies. So I want you to kind of get an understanding here, though. Even though I received a relationship that I had been yearning for since I was a kid, and went about it all the wrong ways. Like, it was a complete Ishmael type of situation where I was not waiting on the promise that God had given me. But I didn't get to this point, and then all of the hurt and self-deprecating thoughts disappeared. Those carried into my marriage too, which that's a whole other testimony situation. But I wanted this to be an encouragement to those of you, especially if you're in a single season in your life. To give you the whole, God's timing is perfect, because I'm sure by now you've heard that and you understand that. I want you to understand this, though. Sometimes the reason why you are not with the person that God has created for you is because either you are not ready and in the right place to receive them, and then to walk together in the calling that God has for you both, or they're not ready. And so what you do in this season and time is pray for your future spouse, and you pray for yourself that you are ready, because you might be the problem. Okay. But God's timing is perfect, and everything will work out. And when I look back at it, I can see how God completely directed everything, because God had already showed me who my husband was going to be. He actually told me Ryan was going to be one time when we were at a together situation. That situation is whenever we were at a wedding of his cousins, and I was there. He was there. He was in the wedding, and I hadn't seen him for like quite a few years. We were younger when we first met, and we were both teenagers at this point. And I remember seeing him, and in my spirit hearing, "That's your husband." And I just thought I was being this boy crazy kind of girl, thinking, yeah, he's gonna be my husband. But at the same time being like, yeah, okay. And just moving on with life. And even looking back on that, knowing that God has given me a prophetic gifting, makes it even funnier to me now, because clearly God was using that, and I would just be like, you're okay. But anyways, I hope this encourages you in knowing that God has everything worked out already, and that when people are placed along your path, much like my father coming and pulling me aside and giving me a little heart check there, and making me really reflect on things. Don't ignore those people. God is placing them in your life for a reason, to get you refocused. And if you ignore that, I promise you your path is going to be a lot longer. Don't put so much of a desire and an emphasis on finding your worth in somebody else loving you or appreciating you or anything like that. I promise you it is nothing but self-deprecating, because people fail us, but God never fails. So I encourage you, when you seek after God, everything else is provided. Scripture tells us that He fulfills everything for us. He is everything for us. So if you're looking for a spouse and want that to be fulfilled, seek after God first.